Hey guys, it's Iconic, and since last Epoch's League launched last week, I have been having a blast on Primalist with a build worthy of being called a Beastmaster. This build surpassed all my expectations for it going into the season, so in this video we're going to be talking about it, the interactions that went into it, and what my experience has been like playing with it thus far. Starting off, I just want to go over the changes that have been made to Beastmaster since last league that made this build actually possible, whereas it wasn't before. And that is primarily the fact that they added certain nodes on the minion trees for Bear and Sabertooth that use your skill tree but use the minion stats. This means now our Bear can actually cast Earthquake or Swipe, and that would use whatever modifications to that skill that you actually apply on the skill tree, giving us so much skill manipulation for these minions. So the core of this build is going to revolve around the Bear and Sabertooth because those are the core minions. The Bear, we have basically given all reign over a single target. He is going to be the single target king, whereas the Sabertooth is going to be geared more towards wave clear to handle quick clears. That is why the clear on your screen is as good as it is. It's because Sabertooth is casting Upheaval, whereas Bear's casting Earthquake. So just to briefly go over the skills themselves, we are picking up the Earthquake node, and we're making it so he has 2 charges on the Earthquake, so he gets to cast this twice, and I think each charge has its own independent cooldown, so it's not necessarily going to be one cast then 6 seconds later another cast. It could be like 2 casts and 6 seconds later another 2 casts, or 1 then 3, or as the case may be. They have independent charges is the point. And I think the strongest part about these interactions is the simple fact that you are able to stack multiplicative damage on your minion skill tree, as well as area of effect to cover a wider area, as well as picking up multiplicative damage on the skill tree node, which makes it so you have so many more avenues to multiply your minions damage. This is the first build I have played in last Epoch where I've been seeing millions in damage numbers, essentially, just from that fact. But for the Earthquake, early on, and this is for leveling, you actually want to do something differently. This is the end game version that I'm going to be going over here. So for the Earthquake, you want to start by scaling initial slam damage and making it so the slam occurs 3 times in the same spot with increasing radius each time. This allows you to then scale aftershock damage as initial slam damage, and the initial slam is where the bulk of your single target DPS is going to come from. So then you get to take a node like this that eventually is giving you basically double damage from your initial slams. You have initial damage here, you want to scale area, so that's here, and then you just want even more damage going from here. And on the Bear side, you're going to be going for, like I said, area, Earthquake, crits, swipe. You're going for a swipe mostly because of the phase per 3 strength, which is a very big scaler because we are stat stacking on this build, and then multiplicative damage here. We are also picking up turn burst, and the purpose of turn burst here is to mostly shred armor, with turn burst triggering whenever Bear attacks, as well as on Earthquakes on every enemy that is hit. You end up shredding a lot of armor just by having the Bear there. Again, more single target. And now for the Sabertooth portion, he is going to be scaling Upheaval. So we're going to be first taking up points for Upheaval, and then whenever your Sabertooth leap switch, I find is very inconsistent. I don't know if there's an internal CD, but Sabertooth just leaps when he feels like it. It feels like there's no real. It just does it when he wants to, and it doesn't do it when it doesn't want to. Sometimes it runs up to enemy, sometimes it leaps. It's like it's just vibes. Anyways, you pick up Upheaval here. We'll go over Upheaval next, and then you're going to be picking up Ancestral Sabertooth's chance. This gives you a chance to have more minions technically, because whenever your Sabertooth hits, you have a chance to trigger Ancestral Sabertooth. And much like chance to trigger, Upheaval is also a chance to trigger on attacks aside the guaranteed leap one. This means Bear wants to scale CDR for its Earthquake, which is every 6 seconds, whereas Sabertooth wants to try to hit as much as possible to trigger Ancestral Sabertooth. and upheaval as much as possible. So we're going to be trying to stack as much attack speed on the Sabertooth, while also giving a chance for flurry attacks, because its flurry swipes is just basically three attacks, very quick. It helps us to trigger everything we wanted to trigger. So this is very strong. And then we're going for area, because we want our people to have more AoE and swipes as well. And then multiplicative damage, crits. And then for the upheaval, because this is going to be our primary wave clear skill, it needs to hit as many enemies as possible and needs to do damage. So we're going to be taking up damage here. We're going to be increasing the number of fault lines. So we have about, I think, 7 fault lines. So whenever I procs, it hits a lot of enemies. From there, you want to pick up area, and then from there, you want to pick up shockwave. Shockwave feels... I started initially playing this without shockwave, and then with shockwave, and it makes a world of difference for clear. It's insane. This node is very strong. You want 3 points in here. And then past that, you just want to pick up the multiplicative damage here before you go for any other modifiers you see here. Then wolves, the purpose of wolves in this build are twofold. A, you want to have a companion that can fill out the rest of your companion slots, since we still get max companion on this build, so it'd be a waste not to. But B, Howl as a buffing skill provides, I think, 25% more melee damage base, and this is a very big scaler for your other minions as well. So it's just another damaging buff you want. So we're going to be prioritizing getting this node before we go for Howl uptime. So we're going to try to get your wolves to howl whenever they hit a rare or a boss, and then you want them to have a decent chance to howl on kills, as well as giving more melee damage and attack speed to whoever is affected by howl. Then past that, you want them to do damage so they can actually get kills. So you have all this multiplicative damage here, and attack cast speed, remove speed here. This means you actually have very good uptime on Howl while actually traversing the map, because they are killing enemies as well as single targets. And then you also want to scale some attack speed, or some bleed chance rather, because you have this node for the bear that scales its damage with number of bleed stacks on the enemy up to a max of 30 multiplicative damage. If you're enjoying the content and you haven't already, do consider liking and subscribing, as it helps a lot with the algorithm and with our 2025 goal of getting 2,000 subs, after which I will be doing a face reveal on stream and here on YouTube. All right, now that we've gotten through the nitty-gritty of the skills and what makes this build as good as it is, I want to go over the item interactions, because I'm really proud of the way it turned out. And there are some very specific interactions here that are very important for the build. The first one is going to be Tyrant Skull. This primordial relic, which is going to be our primordial item of the build, gives us endurance and all attributes, but more importantly, gives us a Tyrannosaur minion. This Tyrannosaur minion gets a bunch of things when you get stats. So for strength, you're getting flat melee damage. For dex, you're getting attack cast speed. For int, fizz pen. The list goes on. This is important for the T-Rex, but then it's even more important for our minions because of that last line, which says when your Tyrannosaur roars, which is a ability cast every 12.5 seconds, and that ability lasts 12 seconds, so it's basically perma uptime. So whenever the Tyrannosaur roars, it grants your other minions flat fizz damage and applies the bonus it's getting from the item at 20% effectiveness. This effectively means your minions are getting 20% of all the stats that are on this item. So and the AoE on the roar is pretty wide base, and we are scaling some AoE as well, so that ends up being in a situation where you really don't have to worry about it not buffing your minions. For every 5 strength you get, you're picking up 3 flat melee for your minions. For every 5 dex, you're picking up 1 attack cast speed boost for your minions. For every, that's effectively what this means. And what I really want you to take note of is the endurance. For every 1% uncapped endurance, your Tyrannosaur gets 1% multiplicative health and damage. This means we can, by scaling endurance, we are getting more damage. And this is important because a key part of our defense in this build is the face of the mountain shield, which gives you block chance per 2 endurance above the cap of endurance, which is 60% by base. Now this is very important because block ends up playing a big role into our defensive towards higher corruptions. and it allows us to skill endurance defensively for our character as well as offensively. And this is why on this build we have like 100 and something percent endurance, if I can find it. No, okay, it's not that important. I have like 100. This planner has like 109 something endurance, but more importantly, it has capped block chance because of the shield. And you get this by just scaling as much endurance as you can. So we are getting endurance here as well as putting endurance from the LPs. We're also going to be getting endurance from our boots. We're getting endurance from the belt. We're getting endurance from, I think we can get it from our rings. We can also get it from the skull if we so choose. The reason it's not on the planner is because it's not needed for the planner. But before you get to the point where you actually have this, because this is basically aspirational shit, you want to have endurance in place of strength. And your first goal with endurance stacking is getting to capped block chance. And then past that, you don't care about endurance as much anymore. We're also going to be using Mantle of the Pale Ox because this is a very good defensive piece. We're going to be using it to redirect damage from ourselves to our minions, as well as for plus the levels of strength minion skills, which all our minion skills are strength based. Then we have our helmet, which also gives +2 to minion skills. That is the biggest advantage it has. And then it has +1 companion, giving us an extra wolf. Any sort of plus companion in this build is going to give us an extra wolf essentially, which is extra damage. And then evolution's end is +2. You can, I think, switch this from an evolution's end to a nihilist, or however you pronounce it, which is an Aberroth drop. I don't have it. It's the end game version. It's what you would go for end game, but I think it's much easier to get this as a 2-OP than it is to get nihilist. So I plan to leave evolution's end here, but just keep in mind that this is an option. And just for those that don't actually know what the amulet looks like, it's this guy, where you can get more armor, you can get more skills, you can get more like all res. I think we can get all res here, and more importantly, you can get increased health and increased mana. Doesn't matter as much though. And then because we are stat stacking, we are going for cleaver solution. This means this sets our intelligence to our strength, and it means by strength stacking, we're also going to be getting int. So by getting flat fizz, flat melee damage, we're also going to get in a lot of physical pen. I think to the tune of like 20%, but that ends up being the only source of our physical pen in this build, aside like generic skill pen, which other minions don't have access to. So we end up opting for physical pen on the cleaver solution as the LP item. And then for rings, red rings of Atlaria would eventually be the choice of rings, but for now, going into it, I just have turquoise rings. I don't even have turquoise rings, to be honest, in game, but that is the goal early on, and then eventually you want to switch to red rings and then figure out block chance, probably by getting endurance here or something. With items out of the way, we're going to be going through the passive tree. Now, if you want to level this build, you are going to be taking a different route, but I will have a different section for how to level this build once we're done talking about the base end game stuff. So for here, we are going to be picking up health, strength, and more health. The idea here is just to get as tanky as possible while keeping our minions relatively tanky. The leech here, not the most important, but it's nice to have. Then we're going to be going through the Beastmaster. Important things to note here: we're getting aspect of the board whenever we evade, and we are getting aspect of the links whenever we use our companion skills. This gives us 30% reduced damage taken, as well as increased bleed duration, which I mean we don't really care about, but our minions really like, because we're giving our minions boar aspect with this one, whereas as links by default affects them because it gives minions flat crits and stun chance. And eventually when you get this, it gives you leech as well as minion crit multi, a lot of crit multi for that matter. So this node is very interesting. And then we are picking up 15 points in the shaman tree, so we can pick up earthquake, and this allows us to get stun avoidance per attunement, as well as some chill chance for earthquakes, multiplicative damage right here, but that's by the way. And then for idols and blessings, we're going to be prioritizing CDR for the bear's earthquake because we want it to proc as much as possible. For our skills, we're also going to be picking up Fury Leap instead of earthquake, and Warcry in place of upheaval. Fury Leap is our traversal skill, nice to have, and then Warcry is just an extra damaging ability you use when the bear has cooldown on its earthquake to allow it to do it one more time. That being said, it also serves as an enemy stunner. If you ever get like surrounded and you think it's dangerous, you just hit this and you're fine. Then for back to idols, we're going to be stacking minion CDR on the 1x4s. They are the most important idols. You want to get as much minion CDR as possible. Once you have that, you just want to use the rest of your idols to fill out the gaps you have in resistances with them. And once you have that filled out, you want as much life as possible and as much health regen and crit reduction. I think crit reduction this season is mandatory. The damage I'll be getting from crits in monos is absurd, and I think getting as much crit reduction is the priority here over even getting life and health regen. But as a secondary, you do want health and health regen on the small ones. And that's about it for idols. For our blessings, we are picking up health regen, health, because we want as much health regen as possible. It just feels comfy to have. Endurance threshold, so our 60% damage reduction kicks in earlier. Endurance for block as well as damage. All res to help with the res situation, and then health on block because we get to 100% block chance. So this is very nice sustain. Now for how to level this build, I can't say this is the best way, but this is what I did. Initially, I picked up nodes into attunement and spell damage, and I went totems because totems in this game are affected by minion damage, so I could scale minion damage as well as spell damage and do damage with my wolves and whatnot. Then once I got my Beastmaster ascendancy and was able to actually fill out this tree, I changed that. I removed these points and went for the tree you see here. I think I actually dropped this health and I picked up more leech because at this time there isn't much leech, and eventually you want to switch away from that. Then you pick up 5 points from savagery for Primalist, and so you can unlock the bear. Once you have your bear, you also want to be using Summon Raptor at this time to fill out your minion count, and then you want to go for Shaman to unlock Earthquake, so your bear actually has pretty good Earthquake. Now for Earthquake, you wouldn't be going for this tree you see here because as of this moment you don't have Sabertooth for clear. Instead, you want to prioritize Aftershock, so you'd go for Aftershock area, Aftershock damage, chance to cast another Aftershock. Your bear's Aftershock is going to be a big chunk of your wave clear. You're going to have less single target for it, but your wave clear is going to feel so much nicer with that. And then you just gradually add skills as you get points to specialize. Your Sabertooth is going to be the longest, like it's going to take the longest to get because it's 35 points in and you spend 15 points in Shaman before. But once you get that, you can then switch to the skills sections we have here. Well, get that and level 50s to actually get upheaval. Then you can switch to this version. But by the time you unlock Sabertooth, you should be level 50. Or at least I was level 50 at that point. But that is pretty much how you level this up. I might add a section to the equipment section just for leveling. Not sold on it yet. So if you see an equipment section, then or for a leveling section, then I decided to do it. That about covers everything you need to know about the build. Now I want to talk a bit about how my experience with the build thus far. Essentially, I think starting off, levels 1 to 20 were like the most awkward point of the build because you do not have the minion pools to actually go full on minions from the get-go. So you have to make do with like a hybrid setup using either like totems or self-damage abilities or whatever to supplement that until you get access to more minions. And that is typically like around the level 20 ranges when you've gotten your Beastmaster and you have some points into Wolf to actually fill that out, and you've unlocked Raptors and you're going to unlock Bear soon and all these other things. So aside that awkward point, the build was smooth sailing throughout the campaign. Earthquake was a very big wave clearer with Aftershocks before the whole Sabertooth respec. Then getting into the end game, I noticed currently damage feels a lot higher than it's been in previous seasons, and very spiky too, with crits being very overtuned. So getting into the end game, I did not feel tanky going through like the higher monos into empowered monos until I got my chest piece, which was something I had to actually go farm, because at this point I felt relatively squishy. So until you get the uniques in this build, you are probably going to feel on the squishier side. Or alternatively, I guess you could go for like endurance map capping, because I didn't have 60% endurance, so that was a very big like EHP loss on my side. Then this build also uses 2 mountain pieces, which are unique items that come specifically from the Lightless Arbor dungeon. This means before you actually go to the dungeon and kill the boss, you are not going to have these uniques. You do not have a chance of dropping these uniques unless you like go for specific Weaver tree nodes, which I can actually show real quick. Are these nodes down here? These nodes give monsters in your map, or it gives your maps a chance to spawn monsters from the dungeon, and those monsters have a chance to drop your unique. So these nodes would have been a godsend if I knew about them early. And then these nodes just help you drop a lot more dungeon keys. So you can really spec into your tree for the dungeon, so you can actually farm the keys in very fast. I currently have like 60 something Lightless Arbor, so I'm probably going to spend a lot of time in Lightless Arbor shield trying to get like a 2 LP 3 LP shield. The shield doesn't start dropping until T3, where it has a 12% chance to drop, and then T4 has an 18% chance to drop. And the boots are much more frequent in terms of drop rates. They start at T2 with 20% chance, and by T3 you have 35% chance. T4 can get very rippy if you don't have these two though, so I do recommend farming T3 until you feel relatively tanky enough to like go for T4. Otherwise you'd be wasting dungeon keys with the increased death rate you would have. But yeah, once I got Mantle of the Paylocks, and I think the first unique I got was the boots, it was smooth sailing. It felt very comfy, and then eventually I got the shield after a lot of grinding. And from that point on, I felt very tanky. I now have a lot of block chance, and I have health on block coming from the blessing. And I currently have a 2 LP shield, but I haven't hit endurance on it. So I have T6 block chance, and I also have health gained on block on my shield, which ends up being very comfortable when you're taking a barrage of attacks. I'm also not block capped in game. It's currently sitting about, I think, like 74% or something. So I'm going to need to stack more endurance, but I'm also mostly on 1 LP uniques. My chest is 1 LP, my helmet is 1 LP, my relic is 1 LP, my gloves are 1 LP. I have a lot of 1 LP items in the TLDR of that. But yeah, once I got my uniques, it was like very smooth sailing. That about sums up everything you need to know going into this build. I am currently, as of the time of this recording, at about 200 corruption, and I can easily see this build killing Aberroth, but I will be farming up for that later today. I'm not entirely sure this build can kill Uber Aberroth though, because minion survivability would then become a concern at that point. But let me know in the comments if you have any questions, suggestions, and what your experience has been like with Beastmaster this season if you've played him. If you haven't already, do consider liking and subscribing, as it helps the channel a lot. And with all that said, thank you for watching.